Have you ever taken a scroll through LinkedIn and found some of the buzzwords? Maybe you've seen synergy or innovative. How about dynamic, maybe track record? Legacy is the new buzzword, but most of us have never actually thought about what that means. Before I lost my dad, I thought that legacy was about assets, security, and stability. But I realized how wrong I actually was. Walk back with me to September 16th, 2018. It was a normal Sunday. I was hanging out with my mom and my sisters, and we were supposed to have dinner with my dad that day. I texted him to let him know that I was going to be late for dinner, and my youngest sister left early. She was already on her way. About 15 minutes later, my mom's phone rings. What? What? No. After the first what, I knew that somebody died. Daddy died. It felt like someone punched me in the chest, body slammed me against the wall, and I literally slid down to the floor. I'm the eldest, and in every emergency, I'm the one that stays cool, calm, and collected. My first thought wasn't grief. It was, what do we do now? My sister, my middle sister, was standing just a few steps away from me, and she stood there, just frozen. My youngest sister worked with my dad, and then we knew that we couldn't tell her over the phone, so we made her come back. Telling her was the hardest thing that I've ever done. She got out of the car, and she knew something was wrong. She's like, tell me right now. Daddy died. The blood-curdling scream that left her body still lives in my body today, and she collapsed into the grass next to the driveway. That was the beginning of what we call the Rosario War. My dad was remarried. He had twin girls that were 5 years old, and he ran a very successful granite business. He was 51, and he thought he had more time to do his estate plan. You see, when you pass away in the state of Florida and you have no estate plan, your surviving spouse gets 50% of your estate, and the remaining 50% is split amongst the children. My dad had 5 daughters, lucky him, and my 2 sisters and I got 10% each, and the other 20% went to his wife because the daughters were 5. A couple months later, she ended up inheriting the business, and a couple of months later, she fired the 6 family members that worked for the business. Shortly after that, she sold the business, and my sisters and I got the lovely pleasure of finding out that the business had been sold, getting a call from a stranger named John telling us that he's the new owner. I was so angry. It was supposed to be a family business, and she gave it away like it was nothing. It took me a long time to realize that she was newly widowed, she had 5-year-old twins that she needed to raise, and she'd inherited a business that she had no idea how to run. She was in survival mode, and she did what most of us would do. She tried to get out of it as quickly as she could. Now, I know that there's a lot of attorneys and wealth managers in the room, and the sentence that keeps running through your head is like, Alexa, that's obviously why he needed to have an estate plan. And you're right, that was absolutely the case. But here's what I've learned. I've spent almost a decade working with families who are inheriting property, and only about 1/3 of them have estate plans. Of those that do, many of them are written in private. No one knows what's in them until the will reading, and then everybody's blindsided, and we wonder why families collapse under the weight of inheritance. An estate plan tells people what you're leaving behind, but it doesn't tell them who they are, and it doesn't tell them why you made the decisions that you made. Estate plans don't hold a family together, they just divide assets. And that's when I realized that legacy isn't just about assets, and an estate plan is never going to be enough. So if it wasn't about legacy, I went on this whole search to figure out what legacy actually is, and I came across a stat that showed that 70% of wealth is gone by the second generation, and 90% by the third. If assets were the legacy, they'd last, but they don't. So if legacy isn't about assets, then what is it actually? I started thinking that maybe it was about the belongings. You see, we didn't inherit the business. In fact, we got a swag bag of Millennium Granite merchandise and some fake jewelry. It's okay, you can laugh. The day that he died, my sister went into his closet and grabbed 3 hoodies. She just wanted something that still smelled like him. There was one for each of us, and his wife called us thieves for it. I built the original version of this talk around that hoodie. But you see, I moved recently, and I tore everything apart looking for it, and I can't find it. After my initial heartbreak, I realized that there was so much irony in it that I almost had to laugh about it, because belongings get lost, stolen, they get worn out, they lose their meaning. I think about, there is a client that I worked with. It was 2 brothers. They were fighting over their mom's 30-year-old green couch, and we all have something like this in the family. In their case, it was the green couch that had plastic wrap on it and no one was ever allowed to sit on. Anybody? Okay. So we don't hold on to belongings because of the objects. We hold on to it because of the memories that are aligned with that. But the belongings aren't the legacy either. So I started thinking, well, maybe legacy is about memories. My dad loved fast cars, and he loved motorcycles. When we were kids, he would take us to Boomers down the street here, and his thing was the go-karts. He was a savage. He would fly past us, cackling along the way, and he called it character building. He was a bright light, that he was the person that if you asked him how he was, he'd say, if I were any better, I'd be twins. He could charm his way in or out of anything. It's crazy. But memories are fickle. You can have the exact same family, go through the exact same experience, and walk away with completely different meaning. And that's when I realized that if we don't have shared meaning, then memories are not legacy either. So then I started to realize that the stories that our families tell us about those memories, that becomes something else entirely. That becomes our inner voice. And that inner voice shapes the roles that we play in this world, it shapes how we show up, and it shapes what we allow ourselves to do. I want you to imagine for a second a family tree. Not like a diagram, an actual tree. When we're born into this world, we become like a little baby leaf that's like fragile and delicate, and it still needs all this nutrition from the branch. But as we get older, we mature, we get stronger, we build our own family. We have our own leaves, and we become a branch of our own. And then, for some of us, if we're lucky enough, we get to live a long life, we get to build wisdom, we get to get stronger, and we become the trunk of that tree. That's when we get the honor of being a grandparent. And then one day, we're not here anymore. And some of us get really uncomfortable with the idea of not being here anymore. But it's not because we don't matter. Think of the roots under a tree. Those roots are essential for that entire tree to exist, to thrive, and to continue to grow. We are generations of identity stacked on top of each other. I was lucky that the inner voice that I inherited said, baby girl, you are a Rosario, and you can do anything. So thank you. So I always did hard things. For example, last week, I was standing on this exact stage, and I had a complete meltdown in rehearsal. Any of the ladies backstage can testify. And on the drive home, I kept replaying this speech in my head, and I said my own words, baby girl, you're a Rosario, and you can do anything. And I had to laugh at myself, and I'm like, why am I so worried? I can do hard things. I can do anything. But some of us weren't handed that voice. Some of us inherited a voice that said something completely different. Things like, you're not good with money. Who do you think you are? You'll never be anything. Or, you're just like your mother. If that's you, and that's the inner voice that you inherited, I want you to know that that voice was never yours. You didn't choose it, but you chose to be here today. And for the first time in your family's history, You get to decide what's true. I realized that I was onto something and that there was one more layer. My parents are the hardest working people that I know. That work ethic is so deep in me that I never recognized it as inherited. It was just who I thought I was. On my dad's last birthday, I had a showing that day, and so I was there for like 30 minutes. I gave him his birthday present, kissed him on the cheek, sang happy birthday, and I'm like, love you, Daddy, gotta go. And he's like, I'm so proud of you, baby girl. Go do your thing. 32 days later, he was gone. And after that, I promised myself that I would never put business before family again. Fast forward to Christmas this year. I was on a deadline to finish my new book, The Legacy Year, and the whole family was together. They're laughing, eating, playing games. Meanwhile, I'm like off to the side, headphones in, clacking away on my keyboard like a mad woman. And so my grandmother comes over and she's like, it's Christmas, you can wait. And I'm like, nope, on a deadline, gotta finish it, can't stop. And I didn't even realize that I had done it again until I was putting this talk together. So what I've landed on is this. Legacy is the identity that we inherit. Our loved ones' greatest gift is what they make us believe about ourselves. That belief outlasts the assets, the belongings, and the memories. It belongs to your family for generations. By definition, an heirloom is something valuable that has belonged to a family for generations. That means that you are the heirloom of your family, and I am the heirloom of mine. Not the assets, not the jewelry, not the property or the house or the business or anything else, you. As a matter of fact, because I need to make sure you guys believe that, I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, you are the heirloom of your family. Go ahead. Okay, now turn to the other neighbor and say, neighbor, I am the heirloom of my family. Go ahead. I love this. Back in the day, families were very intentional about this. They called it a coronation. It was a deliberate passing of identity, not just assets. And we've lost that art. And the cost of it is that families collapse from the conversations that we avoid, the conversations that we say will be one day or someday, and then never end up happening. So let me ask you now, how do you define your legacy? Thank you.